You're not coming in, Dad. This is my house now. My name's James Carter, 72, from Austin, Texas. That was my daughter, Emily. She stood behind the new steel door I paid for, the one I installed with my own hands 15 years ago. I thought she was joking. But then I heard the deadbolt slide. The sound hit me harder than any word could. I built that house brick by brick, from the foundation to the roofline. Every wall still held my fingerprints under the paint. And now I was standing outside it like a stranger. "Emily," I said softly. "Sweetheart, just open the door. Let's talk." "There's nothing to talk about," she replied. "You made your choices. Now it's my turn." Her voice carried through the wood like ice. Behind her words, I could hear the television and the faint hum of the air conditioner I'd repaired last summer. Everything inside was familiar, except her tone. I gripped the brass key in my pocket, the same one I'd cut when she was 6. She'd watched me work on the front steps, a tiny hand resting on my shoulder. I told her then, "One day, this'll be your home, Em. Just promise me you'll keep it filled with love." She'd smiled and said, "Always, Daddy." That word, Daddy, used to mean something. Now it sounded like it had been erased from her mouth. I looked through the front window. Curtains drawn. My reflection stared back. Tired eyes, worn jacket, hands that once built dreams. My wife, Laura, would have known what to say. She was the heart of this house. When she passed 5 years ago, Emily drifted. I thought grief had just changed her rhythm. I never imagined it would harden her. I knocked again, gently this time. "Emily, it's late. I don't have anywhere else to go tonight." "You'll figure it out," she said. "You always do." Then silence. Silence so deep, it felt like the house itself was holding its breath. I stood there a long while, unsure if I was waiting for forgiveness or just a sound from the past. Neighbors' porch lights flicked on. Curtains moved. I could feel the eyes, the quiet judgment. The key slipped from my fingers and hit the step with a dull clink. I picked it up, turned it once in the lock out of habit. Nothing. The bolt wouldn't budge. It was new. She'd changed it. A strange calm settled in me. Not anger, not sadness, something in between. I pressed my hand against the door, feeling the cool surface. "I built you to protect her," I whispered to the house, "not to shut me out." For a moment I thought I heard movement inside, maybe hesitation. But no. Just the low hum of a refrigerator and the weight of everything unspoken. I turned away, the gravel crunching under my boots, and walked to the edge of the driveway. The porch light flickered behind me, the one I wired the day Emily graduated college. I remembered holding her diploma, tears in my eyes, telling her how proud her mother would have been. Funny how memories can feel heavier than a locked door. The night air felt sharp, cutting through my jacket. I took a slow breath and looked back one last time. The house glowed warm and golden. Inside that glow was everything I'd built, everything I'd given. And all I could think was, how fast love can close a door. I walked down the street, the key tight in my fist. I didn't know where I'd sleep that night. But I knew this. Something had broken that couldn't be rebuilt with nails or mortar. The moonlight caught the brass key, and for the first time, it looked like a memory instead of a promise. I sat on the porch for hours that night, the wood creaking beneath me like it still remembered my weight. The air smelled of rain and cedar, the same mix that filled this yard the day I finished building it. I never thought I'd end up outside my own home, feeling like an intruder on my own life. The lights inside flickered off one by one. Emily's shadow passed across the window, just for a second, and then disappeared. That was the moment it truly hit me. She wasn't angry. She was done. I ran my fingers along the porch rail. The paint had started peeling, but under it was still the same oak I'd planed myself. When I built this porch, Laura sat right there, legs crossed, reading a magazine and sipping her sweet tea. Emily was 9, sitting between us, drawing flowers on the fresh concrete with a stick. She'd said, "When I'm big, I'm going to live here forever." Laura laughed. "Then your dad better make it strong." I told her, "It'll last longer than we do." And now here I was, 72, testing that theory. A light breeze moved through the yard, stirring the chimes Laura hung from the beam above me. They still sounded the same. Soft, kind, like her laugh. For a while, I just sat there, letting the sound fill the space that used to hold our voices. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my neighbor, Ben. "Jim, you okay?" Saw the lights go off. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. What was I supposed to say? "My daughter locked me out, but I'm fine. Thanks for asking." Instead, I just typed, "Yeah, just getting some air." I leaned back, watching the stars fade behind thin clouds. You'd think the sky would feel comforting. But that night, it looked like it was turning its back too. Then I remembered the small photo in my wallet, the one I always kept folded behind my license. It was taken the day the last brick went in. I was younger, stronger, with mortar on my forearms and pride in my grin. Emily was sitting on the front steps, Laura's arm around her, both of them covered in dust. That photo was everything we were: effort, love, and laughter wrapped in sunlight. I took it out, smoothing the crease with my thumb. The paper felt fragile, like time itself could crumble it. "Look at us," I murmured. We were so sure. For a second, I thought about knocking again, about telling Emily that no piece of paper or lock could change what we'd built together. But pride is a quiet thing. It doesn't shout. It just keeps you still. A car passed by, its headlights sweeping across the yard. I half expected her curtain to move, to see her face. But nothing. Only stillness. The porch light clicked off. Total darkness now. The kind that makes you feel like even the walls have forgotten your name. I sat there until my back hurt, until the crickets stopped, until it was just me and the whisper of wind through the grass. And then I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. Imagine that. A man spending his last years outside the home he built. Before I stood up, I pressed the photo against my chest. "I'll figure it out, Laura," I whispered. "I always do." As I walked down the driveway, something fluttered near the gate, a folded paper caught under the fence. Probably trash, I thought. But as I reached for it, I saw my daughter's handwriting scrawled across the back. My heart stopped for half a beat. It wasn't just a paper. It was something she'd left there, intentionally or not. The porch behind me creaked in the wind, almost like it was waiting. The paper was damp from the evening dew, edges curled and soft. I turned it over under the streetlight and saw my daughter's handwriting, sharp, rushed, as if she'd been angry even while holding the pen. It wasn't a note for me. It was a legal notice, stamped and signed. According to it, I wasn't the owner of my house anymore. Emily's name was on the deed. Mine wasn't. I stood there for a long while, reading and rereading the same cold words until they blurred. I didn't understand at first. The house had been in my name since the year I finished it. I'd built it on land my father left me, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. I never borrowed a cent. But there it was, black ink saying I no longer belonged to the home I created. "Jim?" A voice called softly from across the fence. It was my neighbor, Ben. He was in his robe, holding a flashlight and a worried look. "Everything all right, buddy?" he asked. I tried to sound steady. "Just clearing something up. Got a bit of a mix-up with the house." He frowned. "Mix-up? I saw the truck here last week. Looked like she was moving furniture." "She was," I said quietly. "Moving mine." Ben looked at me, the way people do when they don't know whether to offer help or distance. He finally said, "If you need a place tonight, you can use my porch swing." I gave him a tired smile. "Thanks, Ben. I'll be okay." When he went inside, I unfolded the notice again, this time slower. The signature at the bottom, Emily Carter, felt like a knife wearing her name. The lawyer's note attached said I'd signed over property rights. But I hadn't, or at least I didn't remember doing so. Then it hit me. Last year, when she helped me simplify the paperwork, she'd brought forms from the bank. I didn't read them. I trusted her. She told me it was just insurance and tax updates. I signed because she was my daughter, because that's what love does. It trusts. The streetlight buzzed overhead. Somewhere, a dog barked. I folded the paper and put it in my jacket pocket, the same pocket that once held candy for her after school. Walking back toward the porch, I tried the door again. It didn't move, not even a rattle. I pressed my forehead against it. "Emily," I said quietly, "you didn't have to do this." No answer. Just the faint hum of life inside without me. I sat back down on the steps, the notice in my lap. I remembered the day Laura and I signed the first papers for this house. She was so proud, said it was our forever place. She made me promise to keep it in the family. I did. I just never imagined it would mean this. My chest tightened, not from anger, but grief. The kind that doesn't shout, just sinks deep. I took the folded paper, smoothed it flat on my knee, and stared at it under the porch light. Somewhere in that stack of legal words, I could still hear Laura's voice. Make sure she knows this house is built from love, not money. Maybe that's where I went wrong. Maybe Emily saw only what the house was worth, not what it meant. I sat there until dawn, holding that letter like it could still warm me. When the sun came up, I made a decision. I'd leave. Not because she'd won, but because staying would mean begging for what was already mine in spirit. As I stood, the paper slipped from my hand and drifted onto the porch, catching a sliver of sunlight. I looked back once more and whispered, "You can change the name, Em, but you can't change the story." Then I turned toward town, toward whatever came next. The motel room smelled like dust and disinfectant, the kind of place people stayed when they'd run out of choices, not plans. The sign outside blinked vacancy in red, the light slipping through the blinds every few seconds, like a heartbeat. I dropped my small bag on the bed and sat down. The springs complained, same as my knees. I stared at the peeling wallpaper and thought, so this is home now. The woman at the front desk had called me sir 3 times, like politeness could cover pity. She didn't ask what brought me there, and I didn't offer to tell her. The silence was heavy. I'd never realized how much sound a house makes. The hum of the fridge, the soft click of a thermostat, the way a floorboard creaks under memory. This room had none of that. Just the buzz of a dying light bulb and my own breathing. I took the brass key out of my pocket, the one that no longer fit. I turned it over in my hand, running my thumb along the teeth. It had worn smooth in places, just like me. There was an old Bible on the nightstand, the kind motels keep for forgotten souls. I opened it, out of habit, not faith, and a small folded paper slid out. Someone else's note. It said, "You'll find your way back." I almost laughed. The universe has a cruel sense of timing. After a while, I stood up and looked at my reflection in the mirror above the sink. I barely recognized the man staring back. Gray hair, lined face, eyes tired, but still stubborn. The kind of man who built homes with his hands and didn't know how to stop building, even after everything fell apart, I whispered. You built her a world, and she shut the door. The mirror didn't answer, but the silence did. It wrapped around me like an old coat. Later that night, as I unpacked my things, I pulled out an old wooden box I hadn't opened in years. It had survived every move, every season, every heartbreak. Laura had given it to me the day Emily was born. Inside it, she'd kept everything we once thought worth saving. Baby photos, birthday cards, her hospital bracelet. I held one picture of Emily at 6, sitting on my shoulders in the front yard. Her smile looked like sunlight. Somewhere along the way, that light had dimmed. I just couldn't figure out when. As I set the picture down, I noticed something else in the box, a small key taped under the lid, one I'd forgotten about. I peeled it off carefully. It was old, thinner than the house key, with a faded engraving. JLC, my initials. It opened a small compartment I hadn't remembered existed. Inside was a folded envelope, yellowed with age, sealed in Laura's handwriting. I froze. She'd written my name on it, James. My throat tightened as I sat back down on the bed. I didn't open it yet. For years I'd thought that box was just memories. Turns out, it still had secrets. The blinking sign outside cast a red shadow across the floor. I stared at that letter, wondering why she'd left it hidden and what it might say. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. I placed it on the nightstand beside the brass key and turned off the light. But I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the front door of my house, the one I built, the one my daughter had locked behind me. And somewhere deep inside, I knew that letter was the beginning of something I hadn't been ready to face. Morning came slow, pale light slipping through the blinds like it was afraid to touch the room. I sat on the edge of the bed, the envelope still in my hands. My fingers hesitated at the seal, as if opening it might change something I couldn't undo. It smelled faintly of lavender. Laura always pressed a drop of oil into her stationery. Even after all these years, it still carried her scent. I finally tore it open. Her handwriting was steady, graceful, the kind that came from a woman who measured her words. James, it began. If you're reading this, it means Emily's grown and I'm gone. You've given her everything, maybe too much. You build things to last, houses, fences, promises, but people don't always work that way. Don't lose yourself trying to hold them together. If one day this home feels lost, remember, the heart of it will always be yours. My chest ached. I read it again, slower this time. She must have written it near the end, when the doctors had started using words like months. Below the letter, folded neatly, were the original house papers, the deed, the will, everything. My name was still there. The property had never legally transferred. Whatever Emily had filed was forged, or at least altered. I sat there stunned, the truth spreading through me like slow heat. But I didn't feel anger. I just felt tired. Laura's words kept echoing. Don't lose yourself trying to hold them together. I looked around the motel room, the cracked mirror, the buzzing light, the world stripped of meaning, and realized I'd been living as if love meant possession. Maybe Emily needed to feel in control, even if it meant hurting me. Maybe she saw the house as a symbol of everything she'd never had a choice about. Still, that didn't make it right. I laid the papers on the bed, smoothing them flat. My fingers traced Laura's signature, strong and certain. She'd known something like this might happen. She'd hidden the truth, not to give me power, but peace. The clock ticked louder than it should have. I found myself whispering, "You knew, didn't you, Laura? You knew she'd turn against me someday." A soft knock broke the silence. I opened the door halfway. It was the motel clerk, young woman, polite smile, holding a folded newspaper. "Sir, someone left this for you at the front desk. Said your name's Carter?" "Yes, that's me." She handed it over. "They didn't leave a message, just this." I nodded, thanked her, and closed the door. The newspaper was from 2 days ago. Tucked inside the front page was a small business listing. A Carter Home Restoration LLC, registered under Emily Carter. My old company's name, the one I started 40 years ago. She'd taken that too. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the headline. Then I folded it neatly, placed it under Laura's letter, and let out a shaky breath. There was no revenge in me. Not anymore. Only the weight of knowing I'd built too much and taught her too little. That night, I placed the letter back in the box with the key on top. I didn't know what I'd do yet. I only knew I needed to see Emily again, not for the house, but for whatever love still flickered between the cracks. The motel light buzzed above me, but this time, it didn't feel so harsh. Maybe because I finally understood. Even the strongest walls can't keep love from breaking. I found her a week later. She was standing in the driveway, phone pressed to her ear, pacing like the world owed her answers. The house behind her looked smaller somehow. Maybe because I'd finally accepted it. Didn't belong to me anymore, not in the way that mattered. When she saw me, her face stiffened. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk, Emily," I said softly. "Just talk." She sighed, glancing at her watch. "I'm busy. Make it quick." I studied her for a moment. The expensive jacket, the cold confidence. She looked like someone who'd been practicing detachment for years. But under it, I could still see the little girl who once fell asleep on my shoulder during thunderstorms. "I found your company name in the paper," I said. "Carter Home Restoration." Her eyes narrowed. "It's just a business, Dad. You weren't using the name anymore." "It's the name I built my life on," I said quietly. "The one I gave you when you were born." She crossed her arms. "You build houses, Dad. I build deals. It's not the same thing." "No," I said, "it's not." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind carried the faint sound of wind chimes from the porch. Laura's chimes. The same ones I'd hung 20 years ago. "You forged my signature," I finally said, "on the property papers." Her face didn't move, but her eyes flickered just once. "You signed them, Dad. You just didn't read them." "I trusted you," I said. She looked away. "You always use that word like it's a virtue. But trust isn't ownership. You built everything your way, even my life. Maybe this was the only way I could build mine." Her words cut, but there was something honest in them. I stepped closer, the gravel crunching under my boots. "Emily, I never wanted to own you. I just wanted you to feel safe." "Safe?" she snapped. "I felt trapped. Every wall, every corner of this house, it was all you. I needed something that was mine." I nodded slowly. "And you chose to take mine away." Her eyes shimmered, but she blinked it back. "You wouldn't understand." "You're right," I said. "Maybe I don't, but your mother would have." Her mouth tightened. She turned toward the door, hand on the handle. "We're done here, Dad." I held out the small wooden box. "She left this for us." Emily hesitated, her hand frozen midair. "What is that?" "A letter," I said. "From your mother, written before she passed." She frowned, but curiosity flickered across her face. "Why would she leave something like that?" "Because she saw what was coming," I said. "And she wanted to remind us who we were before all this." She looked at the box like it might burn her fingers. "You should keep it." I shook my head. "It's for you now." For a long second, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she reached out and took it. Our hands brushed, just enough to remind me she was still my little girl somewhere inside all that armor. "Emily," I said softly, "whatever you think I've taken from you, you still have something I can't rebuild without you. Family." Her lips trembled, but she didn't answer. She turned and walked inside, closing the door gently this time. Not slammed, just closed. I stood there in the quiet, the same porch beneath my feet, the same air heavy with unsaid things. Through the window, I saw her set the box on the kitchen table, her shoulders shaking just once before she disappeared into the next room. I didn't knock again. I just turned and left. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Not because things were fixed, but because I'd finally stopped fighting what was already broken. It was past midnight when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. It had been weeks since Emily last spoke to me. But something in the way the phone kept ringing, it felt different. "Dad." Her voice was quiet, trembling. Can you come over?" The same house, the same porch. Only this time, the door wasn't locked. She stood there barefoot in one of Laura's old sweaters, the one with the missing button near the collar. Her eyes were red. "Emily?" I asked gently. "What happened?" She didn't speak. She just pointed toward the kitchen table. The wooden box was open. Inside it, folded neatly, was a letter, yellowed around the edges, written in Laura's handwriting. "I read it," Emily whispered. I think you should too." I picked it up, my hands shaking more than I'd like to admit. The paper smelled faintly of lavender, Laura's scent. I unfolded it and began to read. "My loves, if you're reading this, it means time has done what time always does, taken what it wants. I only hope it's left behind enough love for you to find each other again. You both built this home, one with bricks, the other with dreams. But remember this, a home isn't walls. It's forgiveness. Emily, your father may never say it out loud, but every nail he hammered into this place carried your name. He worked himself to the bone so you'd never feel the hunger or the cold he once did. Don't mistake his silence for pride. It's love, shaped the only way he knows how. And you, my love, if she ever locks you out, don't knock with anger. Knock with patience. She carries your stubbornness. That means she carries your strength too. Love each other. That's the only way this house will ever stand. Forever watching, Laura." By the time I finished reading, my vision blurred with tears. The room was silent except for the sound of the wind brushing against the window. Soft, almost forgiving. Emily was crying too, silently, her hands trembling as she held the corner of the letter. "I didn't know she wrote this," she said. "I thought she was gone before she could." "She always knew what to say," I murmured. "Even when we didn't." Emily looked around the kitchen. The same table we'd built together, the same floor she'd spilled paint on when she was 8. "Dad," she said quietly, "I don't deserve this house." I smiled sadly. "Neither do I. But your mother built it for both of us to learn how to start over." For a moment, she hesitated. Then she stepped closer and wrapped her arms around me. The first time in years. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. It was just real. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," I said, holding her tighter. "So am I." Outside, the first light of dawn crept across the sky, painting the walls in gold. For the first time in a long while, the house felt warm again, alive. And as I stood there, holding my daughter beneath the home I'd built with my hands, I realized something Laura had known all along. Some walls don't keep people out. They just wait for them to come home. Morning came soft and quiet. The kind that doesn't rush you. The kind that lets you breathe. I stood in the yard, the same one where I'd laid the first stone 30 years ago. The air smelled of wet soil and morning dew, and the sun hit the house just right, enough to show every scar in the bricks I'd once thought were perfect. Emily came out carrying 2 mugs of coffee. I hadn't seen her make coffee since Laura passed. She handed me one and smiled, a small, fragile smile, but real. "Mom used to put too much sugar in yours," she said. I chuckled. "And you used to steal the spoon." She looked down, embarrassed but smiling. "Some things don't change." "No," I said, looking at the house. "But some things need to." She followed my gaze. The porch steps were cracked. The paint had peeled around the windows. The gutters sagged slightly, tired, like I used to feel every evening after work. "I want to fix it," she said quietly. "With you." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. "You mean?" "Yeah," she said. "You built it once with your hands. Maybe this time I can build it with mine." The words hit deeper than any apology ever could. So that's what we did, day by day, board by board. I showed her how to hold the hammer, how to measure twice and cut once. She wasn't perfect. She bent a few nails, misaligned a few planks. But every mistake came with laughter instead of shouting. We worked through mornings and sunsets, talking more than we had in years. Not just about the house, but about her life, her business, her regrets, her loneliness. I told her stories she'd never heard about me and her mother, how we used to dance in the kitchen when no one was watching, how this house was never supposed to be just a roof, but a promise. Weeks turned into months. The cracks filled, the walls shined again. And one day, as we stood back to look at our work, Emily whispered, "It feels different now." "It is," I said, "because now it's ours." She turned to me, eyes bright with something new, peace maybe. "You know, I've been thinking." "Dangerous words," I teased. She laughed. "Maybe I'll change the Assas company name. Not Carter Home Restoration, just Carter and Daughter." I didn't say anything for a while. My throat tightened, and I felt Laura somewhere in that wind, the kind that dances through open windows and reminds you you're not alone. "She'd like that," I finally said. Emily smiled. "Yeah, I think she would." As the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat on the porch steps, the same ones she once locked me out from, now fixed, sturdy, strong. The wind chimes swayed above us, their tune soft and familiar. And for the first time in a long while, there was nothing left to fix. You heard what she said. You know what I still feel. Tell me, what should I do now? Should I end this relationship? Should I forgive her? Or should I take revenge? Because no matter what she did, my voice broke, but I steadied it. I still love her.